Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for our Plants, Pests, and Pathogens. This is our last session of the year. And as always, we like to play our much beloved and very fun game, Critter or Not. Um, so, if you've never played this before, here are some rules. All right. So you'll be offered three choices for each scenario. One will be critter, and you can answer with A, and that's of an insect, mollusk, spider, mite, or vertebrate. B is pathogen, so disease-causing fungus, bacterium, virus, nematode, parasitic plant, etc. And answer C with not. And this is something that's a saprobic or beneficial organism, environmental stress, cultural problem, normal plant structure, or genetic abnormality. And as always, keep track of your scores, and we will see how everyone did at the end. No pressure. This is all for fun and for learning. And of course, these situations are also often very difficult for us to assess because of how strange they are. So let's get started. First situation, the client says we're putting in a pasture for our horses, and while clearing found these very strange worm-like things in the freshwater. Our property contains a number of freshwater springs and underground streams. I want to understand what these are and if they are dangerous to our horses. All right, is this a critter or not? And if you are watching online, you can pause it now, and I will give the answer in a couple seconds. All right, so the answer to this one is critter. So these are actually the egg masses of toads. And so toads and other amphibians lay their eggs typically in water and encased in a jelly-like mass. And these corkscrew masses are particular to toads. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this is in April of 2024. This little caterpillar is decimating chestnut orchard. Can you ID it for me? This is the only photo I have. Thanks. I will give you a hint. This is not a caterpillar. So, what do you think? Is this a critter or not? All right. The answer is this is a critter. This is actually the abdomen of a crane fly. And this is likely what happened was that a bird grabbed it and did not take the whole entire insect with it, but it was stuck on the plant and suspected of causing issues. All right, on to the next one. All right, so this one says I could not detect an odor, but I didn't want to get too close. The mushroom on the log was maybe 15 feet away from the area where the rhododendron's leaves on the forest floor had been splashed upon. Pretty horrific looking scene. So, is this a critter or not? And again, feel free to pause the video if you're watching the video. All right, the answer to this one is we don't know. But there is a group of called the coprenoid fungi that turn black and become a mess. But we don't really have enough other information about this situation. I doubt it's an arthropod. It's very widespread, and I don't know of any that produce that blackness. And we don't. It's not a pathogen or anything like that. So it most likely is going to be letter C, not. But we don't have a lot of information here, and these situations happen. All right, on to another situation. All right, our specialist covering Burke County received a pest ID request from a nursery today. Best I can tell, it looks like some kind of egg about to hatch on a philodendron. However, my initial search has not returned anything that quite looks quite like this. Any ideas? All right, what do you think? Is this a critter or not? Okay, the answer to this one is these are sharpshooter leafhopper eggs. And these are from some of the large species. It doesn't necessarily mean it's this species shown here. I just was giving a representation. But these insects lay their eggs in rows in the plant tissue and are fairly large, much larger than typical leafhoppers that you see kind of in the grass and other places. And oftentimes they actually also coat it with a little wax dusting. But this is pretty typical. It won't harm the plant overall, and it's kind of just a little section where those young are developing. All right, moving on, we have this. So we have a few cases we're researching with the same symptoms. This is from New Hanover County in May. They're chlorotic leaves with branching or interlocking networks, superficially appearing fungus-like, but consisting of hollow, whitish egg-like structures less than a half a millimeter in diameter. They've observed it on two completely unrelated evergreen plants, so a cycad and citrus, and found no live arthropods in either sample. One of the photos shows apparent silk around the egg masses. So, is this a critter, pathogen, or not? All right. We are going to show the answer now, and this is actually not. This is actually pine pollen. Pine pollen is very large, kind of looks like Mickey Mouse ears when you look at them up close. And it's visible to the naked eye, and when you magnify it, it does look like strangely suspicious eggs or some kind of fungus or whatever. But the pollen just blows around in the wind and is sticks to different surfaces at that time of year when the pines are reproducing. So anyway, pine pollen grains. All right, next case. We've got Opuntia, the prickly pear from near the South Carolina border, and this was from September of 2024. So what do you think? Critter, pathogen, or not? Okay, so the answer to this one is, although it does kind of look like viral spots or something disease, this is actually the feeding damage from the cactus coreid, a type of leaf-footed bug that's native and feeds specifically on prickly pear cacti. And the species in the east is Calenidia vitiger. All right, next situation. All right, another prickly pear. This is also from the same site, and you see this stuff on it. So, is this a critter, pathogen, or not? And again, it will give you a second to pause the video and figure out what you think it is. All right. So, although this looks fuzzy, like some kind of fungus or something like that, that's actually wax, and it is produced by cochineal scales in the genus Dactylopius. These are scale insects that are specific to prickly pear cacti, and they create carminic acid that is a very useful dye that humans have harvested over centuries. And this may actually be the first record of this insect in North Carolina, but we're still looking into this. But anyway, these are scale insects producing that wax and are encrusting the pads of the prickly pear. Okay, next question. Okay, the trees also have very widespread symptoms of what looks like tip death that culminates in these stunted, rounded sections. So you can see the line of trees here, and then you can see an up close of a twig showing these symptoms. So is this a critter, pathogen, or not? All right, we will now reveal the answer, which is not. These are actually the normal, typical plant structures, and although many people don't see the male cones or strobili of arborvitae, they do produce cones, and so this is just natural plant development and reproduction. Great. Um, on to the next case. So we have a situation in August in Watauga County. This is a zucchini, and it says images are from a single plant where fruit showed trails somewhat similar to leaf miner trails on the leaves. However, leaves on this plant do not show leaf miner activity. Could this be viral? They go on to say wind damage, scouring, abrasion from stems was also considered as a possible cause, but symptoms are only showing on one plant, despite other symptom-free zucchini plants being nearby, exposed to similar wind conditions. So, is this a critter, a pathogen, or not? All right. While I don't know definitely for sure, this is very suspicious and very similar to samples we've gotten in before of the damage from squash beetles. Now, this is probably it based on my knowledge of squash beetles. And squash beetles are actually a type of ladybug that is a plant feeder. Both the larvae and the adults feed on the plants. And the adults, especially, tend to chew these circular gouges in the leaf tissue and also probably going onto the fruits. And because I know that they do this and because of the host and all that stuff, I strongly suspect that this is squash beetle damage on these plant parts. The thought is that they use that to be able to feed in a place where the plant may not be able to put its sap and maybe chemicals there. So it kind of cuts off the lifeline of the plant right there, or defenses of the plant. All right, let's move on to the next situation. All right, so April in Moore County, this client found a weird white fluffy substance on her hydrangea and is wondering what it is. I've never seen anything like this. So, what do you think this is? Is this a critter, a pathogen, or not? All right. We are going to reveal the answer now. And this was pretty surprising. I actually asked a follow-up question for this, and what I asked was, did it fall or was it in this pattern when you found it? And they replied that they had actually put their finger in it and moved it over. So it is superficial. And I had a very good suspicion that this was the case, and they confirmed they saw something nesting in one of the cut twigs of the plant. And so what happens is that there are many solitary bees and wasps. Here's a yellow-faced bee that will nest in the piths of plants. And what they do is they bore into them. They don't damage the plant, and it's usually from cut or broken stems. And in this case, the hydrangea has that very spongy kind of pith, and the insect goes in, excavates the pith, and then starts to make brood cells inside to develop to rear their young. And so basically, up above where this material was falling down in the leaves and made the client very scared or suspicious, but we know now that that's probably a native wasp, and giving these wasps homes is really important, and so it's good to have these nesting areas for these good pollinators and really beneficial insects to live. All right, on to the next one. All right, this white mass was found on the underside of a leaf. At first, it reminded me of praying mantis case. Might you be able to let me know what you think it is? Thank you. All right, I'm pretty sure this is euonymus, and you can see this mass there. So what do you think? Is this a critter, pathogen, or not? All right, we're gonna reveal the answer now. So if you don't want to see it yet, you're still figuring it out, just pause the video. But otherwise, this is a critter. So this is actually a tussock moth cocoon and egg mass. And so very interesting very common caterpillars and moths around here. People often see the caterpillars, which have these amazing sprouts of seedy and these puffs, these almost kind of eraser heads, puffs on their back. And what's interesting is they're fairly common and prolificous. They feed on a lot of different plants. But when you have a female, what happens is it spins the cocoon, it pupates, and then it emerges and is completely wingless. So basically, what it does is it stands on its old cocoon, which is made up of all those seedy from the caterpillar, and it produces pheromones that attract the males. They have these huge antennae, so they can smell them from a large distance away. They will come in, mate with the females, and then the female will lay her eggs directly on her former cocoon. And so that's what we're seeing here. So that is the egg mass of a tussock moth in the genus Orgia. All right, moving on. This was on a trail in Buncombe County. Um, no other comments. Critter, pathogen or not? All right. So this looks kind of funky. And it looks like dung, and it could be a fungus, but actually it is dung. So it is dung. It is from a critter. It's likely bear scat, based on some messages with a mammologist, and obviously you can see it's a fairly large piece of dung, bigger than a dollar bill. So, all right, a folded dollar bill. All right, so we will continue moving on. Oh, actually, we're done with Critter Dot. Great. Well, so if you will go ahead and tally your scores, you can see what you got. I forget how many total questions we had. Um, and maybe we could put it in notes. But for now, I want to move on after you've tallied your scores and taken a look and see how you did. I want to move on to another kind of fun thing. And this was a slideshow of fun and interesting critters from the past year. And I figured since our last session, I wanted to kind of show you some fun stuff and everybody have a nice, enjoyable time and maybe learn a little bit too. Okay, so the first is one I like is this sample. Now, this does have an insect on it, and I wanted to see if anybody could tell where this insect is. It's very well camouflaged, and I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to take a look. But obviously, if you're watching this video, you can pause it, look around, see what you see, and see if you can find it. All right, so let's do a reveal of the insect. And it is this small inchworm. So inchworms are pretty famous, many of them, for being twig mimics. And so it's a very good twig mimic. You can see the two pairs of prolegs here, typical of geometrid inchworms, holding onto the branch. And then you have this long body and then the little tiny legs and head up here at the end, very much resembling a twig on this plant. I just love it. I love that camouflage. All right. Next, I wanted to showcase an insect that I'd been wanting to photograph for many years now, and I finally got up with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who know of a site where these beetles are quarantined. It's on the beaches down in the southeastern part of the state. There's some areas where they are known, but this is the sweet potato weevil. It's a serious pest, a highly destructive pest of sweet potatoes, and of course, North Carolina being such a huge sweet potato producer. We want to keep this insect at bay. Now, unfortunately, there are still existing wild populations on the beaches feeding on wild morning glories. Morning glories being closely related to sweet potatoes. But they are, I think, very beautiful insects. They're very interesting weevil. They're not true weevil in the Cuculionidae. They're a straight snouted beetle weevil, and they have actually been in their own family from time to time. So very interesting insect. And here's another photo of it. Very super interesting little tiny insect. And you can see how big the sand grains on the beach are compared to this insect. So that's about, these are only about a quarter of an inch long or so, or even less. But anyway, sweet potato weevil. So a very cool insect. All right. And then moving on, I wanted to show you some pictures from my trip to Puerto Rico. There were some really amazing insects out there. And of course, many of my trips involve places where there are cool insects because I love taking photos of them. So we got to the to our room, and on the outside of the room was the hieroglyphic moth. Right here on the left, we actually have them in the southeast, but I've never encountered them before, and there were several. So I was really happy to see that beautiful moth on the left. And then there was a beautiful cockroach, the green banana roach over here. And when I told the owner of the property about it, she was amazed that this was a cockroach. And I think it's really beautiful and amazing, even though cockroaches give people sometimes the skeevies. But this one is really pretty.